host, Tonya Gossage, and with me today is Peter Bella with Twist Creative Studio. Peter, good morning. It's a pleasure to have you with me today.
Yeah, thank you. It's obviously a pleasure to be here as well, and it means a lot for you to ask me onto your podcast. Thank you.
Well, it's exciting to have you on, and you are in a space that is very interesting to me, and I believe that it will be to the audience as well. So you are very experienced in the area of video, photography, marketing, advertising, and all of the above. And so I'm very anxious to hear you tell us what Twist Creative Studio has to offer entrepreneurs,
Sure.
corporations, and I know there's things that you don't do. And so I'd like to hear from your perspective that as well. So why don't you share with us a little bit about you and your company this morning?
Sure. Twist Creative Studio is a integrated media production company is how I like to give it the quick answer to that. But what that entails is everything from video production to event production to photography and visual design. And we're definitely a business to business type of studio, which means we don't get into private events such as weddings, birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, and different things like that. It's definitely more of a business to business. So we're here to help businesses succeed and businesses grow. We work on everything when it comes to video, from your typical corporate promotion, just your informational video, testimonial videos, training videos, marketing videos, commercials, and everything that you can think of that needs video. You know, we do that for businesses, even social content and what have you. Event production, we've worked with some big people here in town at the State Convention Center. We've done work at the Governor's Mansion and other locations throughout Central Arkansas, doing event production for them. Photography, again, it ranges everything from, employee headshots to product photography to environmental, interior, exterior photos, photo needs for websites, et cetera, anything in that vein. And we don't have a niche area per se. A lot of studios will have something they have that's their, quote, expertise. And I like to say, quote, expertise. Because to be honest with you, Tonya, the production process, the creating, the vision, all of that is the same regardless of the subject matter. Sure, some things do change, and you have to take your lighting into consideration for that, or your audio into consideration for that. But the production's the production. But you just have to be kind of aware of any small little nuances. So we don't necessarily have a niche area. And I think that's something that is a 50-50 when it comes to video production companies. They can either have a niche like medical or financial law or certain things like that. And then the others are more of a full encompassing kind of service, which is what we are.
I love that. You mentioned some of the big names that you've worked with, here in town, but
Sure.
You didn't mention NASA. You've worked with NASA, PepsiCo, and I've had the opportunity to take a look at your website and see some of the videos that you've done, and the clarity of your videos. I just have to tell you, were phenomenal. I enjoyed looking at your website and seeing the quality of the work that you've put out. And I have to tell you, the one that you did on some of the businesses that you have done work for was, again, I had to look at it a couple of times because I'm like, wow, the resolution, the quality of the work that you produce is way above other work that I have seen. So I also noticed on your website, there was something that really caught my eye, and I would love for you to speak to that. And I'm going to have to look over here because I want to say it exactly like you did. You said that you think differently with a twist, of course. And then you went on to say that you develop big ideas that generate buzz and deliver results.
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about that because, again, I think you differentiate yourself from other people. Talk about that.
Sure. Well, thank you. I would say I'm humbled and flattered at the same time. I've worked for a lot of different clients. So NASA, PepsiCo, Kubota, Butterball.
That's a big name, here.
Big names. And to be honest with you, I'm excited that they're there. I would definitely work with another large client at any time. The size or the name of the organization really has no impact on my approach, if you will, no impact on treatment or anything like that, and not even a difference on the outcome. I treat every client, whether they're small or big, with the exact same experience, the exact same attention to detail. So I think that's really important when, we go back to what you just asked me about my business, and how I work business to business. And, I work small business to, obviously the largest businesses that you can think of. And one of my favorites is just a local hometown beef company, Barham's Old Heart Beef. I love working with Ed and Charlie. I loved walking around the pasture, hanging out with the cattle, and had a great time with them.
I love that video on your website, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. So the think differently, I think that's part of it too. I know we've talked in the past about, the think differently aspect, and you hear a lot of those buzzwords about think differently. But I truly know that I definitely think differently about how I do business and how I approach the clients. Trust, compassion, honesty. And I haven't mentioned this to you before, but one of the things that is an important part of the process for me is the listening aspect. And it's not that I don't think, I know for sure that I can't deliver the product properly if I'm not listening first. And that's first and foremost. And a big thing that's on the front of our website and is about storytelling engineers and creative visionaries. Well, I can't be a creative visionary and a storytelling engineer without knowing the backstory, without knowing who that small business is, who that large corporation is. And even to the point of what exactly are we trying to accomplish with this material, whether it's a photo or a video or even a visual design piece. There's so much importance to actually getting the direct information, the correct information, in coming at that so that we're telling that story properly. So it's not about like, oh, hey, I know everything there is to know about video production or photography. You just listen to me. I'm going to make you something and it's going to be amazing. That's definitely not the case. I know every director and producer, their big dream is to have their creative vision and just be able to say, this is what I'm going to give for you. But a lot of times those aren't going to accomplish the job. You really have to know what the message is. So that's what's going to generate the excitement. When I know my client's super excited about it, and I can take that excitement and put my knowledge and my skills and my experience to it, then that story is going to generate more buzz because it's going to resonate with their audience. And then oftentimes it's even knowing what that audience is wanting to hear and what they're looking for. So it does take that ability to be open-minded with the clients in the project, so that I am, getting that results from that. It's not just creating a reaction, you want to create an action with it too. So get people to actively engage and actively be involved with that material that we're asking them to. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. It does. And you talk about the storytelling, and I'll go back to your website again, because I really looked at that in detail because I was really drawn into the storytelling on your website. And another video in particular was the one that you did for the client in Maumelle. And it started off, and I have to say, again, the clarity, the resolution, the detail, and the story of it started off. And I just have to tell you, at first I was like, okay, what's this video going to be about? And I see this guy, and he has this Gatorade, that starts off between his legs, and the lighting and and I'm like, wow, I'm so drawn into that. And then at the end, and I don't want to spoil it for everybody because everybody needs to go and watch those videos on your website. But at the end, I'm like, I need a Gatorade. I'm like, I got to have a Gatorade. And so the storytelling is a huge part of that. And that is where things are today.
Yes.
And so I really love how you work with the client to bring in the story into an ad, if you will. Very creative, very creative.
Well, thank you so much. That one was a little bit interesting as far as how that came to that. Got the phone call and they said, this is what we want to do. We just want to create a little promotional piece for our sales team. We've just been able to take over distribution of Gatorade here in Central Arkansas. So we're super excited over that. So we're just creating a buzz for our sales team. I just want you to come in and set up a camera in the office. And I'm just going to talk to the camera for about, a minute and 30 seconds and just get the team excited. I was like, okay, why don't I come down then? And we'll talk a little bit more about your idea, your vision, and kind of go from there. So I have an idea of one, and the main concept of that meeting for me is to go in and see the space I'm going to be working in. And that's really important to meet with the client in the space that they want to do the video, because you need to know what your limitations are and what your opportunities are. How much space do I have? What's my height, even for lighting? How's the sound in this location? All kinds of different details that I worry about that my client doesn't have to worry about. So as I'm processing all that while they're talking about the concept. So the concept wasn't the video that you've seen from my client. My client just wanted me to come into the office, set up a camera, do some quick talking head stuff, and then be on my way. So as he was telling me all about the incentive, how they have this gold Gatorade medallion and how they're super excited and they're going to put on an event that's going to be down in this one room. And, so I got to thinking about it and I'm like, man, this is pretty exciting. Why don't you give me a little bit of freedom here? And I'm going to throw an idea back at you. And he said, sure, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. So that's also part of that think differently process too, because I could have just said, all right, that's what you need. Here's the camera. Go ahead and talk. I'll edit a video and send it out to you. But it was more the realization that they have something that was really special, really grand, and we need to give it the attention that it needs. I didn't ask for a different budget. They didn't propose it, a concern about budgetary constraints as far as I don't know if we can afford that, because I didn't, they said, here's what we have. And I said, great, let's work with it. And I think a lot of the projects that I do for clients, and I'm very happy to have the clients that I have, is some of that freedom to kind of say, hey, what if we did something a little bit differently here? For example, with Barnum's Ozark Beef, my first interaction with them was 30-second promotion. went out to the farm out in Ozark, did a lot of videos, spent, a day long up there, capturing a bunch of video footage, some interviews. When I got back to the editing desk and I started editing the footage, I'm like, there's a story here that is absolutely amazing. And that's Charlie Barham, the original farmer from Barham, Charlie Barham, Barham's Ozark Beef. Mm-hmm. And that's a gem. I'm like, I can't let that just go untold. So I went back to the client. I said, what if we made like a 20-minute short documentary film, to be your promotional piece? And he's like, well, I suppose. They were very nervous about it.
Man.
I put it together and presented it to them, and they were beside themselves.
Oh, I bet.
On it. So if you haven't, Tonya, you should give that a watch. It's 19 minutes and some seconds, 20 minutes out of your life. But it's a really interesting backstory on them. I guess it's a backstory, but yeah.
I know who they are, so I need to go in and watch.
Great.
Yeah, I need to go in and watch that whole thing. See, we're from Ozark.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so I need to go in and watch the whole thing. But yeah. So going back, let me go back to the Maumelle story for just a minute.
Sure.
Just so at the end, when I saw, them come together and do the 30-second, minute, whatever that was, I thought to myself, wow, how this ad became so creative by adding that at the beginning. So what you did at the beginning, the twist, I'll call it, the twist to the ad made that what it was, in my opinion.
Well, thank you very much.
Because if you had just done what I can imagine they wanted, which was just set up, film that conversation that they had at the end, I don't think would have been as impactful as it ended up being with you adding what you did at the beginning. That was just phenomenal.
Thank you.
Phenomenal.
And that goes to the storytelling.
Agreed.
People are people. We're all human beings, and we are activated by story. You hear people, what's the story of their life? Well, what's their backstory? And I think that is the most important thing to engage people into viewing something. The entertainment factor, the interest, the curiosity. So you really have to have a strong understanding of psychology, of how people think, how people react to something. It's a critical part of the work that I do. And that's the other end of that, right? The storytelling engineer, but then there's the creative visionary that comes along with that. And it's just making that all work as in harmony, all together is a skill and a talent, that's when done right, really effective.
It really is. I'm actually trying to challenge myself to think more creatively like that. And it's difficult when that doesn't come natural. So anyway, well, I want to ask you, so you've worked, I know as far as 2 hours away from here, and you've worked for NASA and you've done some of those other things. So what about globally? Tell us about, how far in the U.S. globally are you willing to work for people?
Actually, we've had a client as far away as Serbia. The work, however, I didn't travel abroad or anything like that. The work was, in the U.S., but I've had multiple companies from around the globe reach out to me for work here in the States, whether it's locally. The one out of Serbia, they needed work down outside of Bryant, Benton, Hot Springs area. So worked with them, worked with businesses out of Canada, British Columbia, and some different places like that. But as far as like local stuff, I work right down the street, but, I've been to Huntsville, Alabama, working with NASA. Wow. I've been out to Texas. I've been up to Missouri, so Oklahoma. So, I definitely have the ability to travel and to commute and work in remote areas or, large cities, and pretty much been working a lot. South Carolina, I'm like starting to think South Carolina, Massachusetts, DC, Illinois.
New York. Haven't you done some work in New York or?
Yeah. New York as well. So, I do focus Central Arkansas, of course, it's right around the corner,
right.
But I can work across Arkansas. I can work in the Mid-South region. Those are the easy ones to get to. And obviously, once you get to something that's more of like overnight travel, do those as well, can continue to do those. They just take a little more logistics and planning, but, all kinds of different projects, big and small.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about video. Do you want to talk about photography and the advertising side of things a little bit and share with the audience what your opportunities are there?
Sure. I'm trying to think how, where to kind of start on that. So the photography that I do is definitely still that business to business photography. It's not just coming in and doing some employee headshots. It is a lot to do with the environment. It's called lifestyle or environmental photography, whether it's the inside front foyer of your large corporation where you want a picture on the splash page of your web page on that first homepage when you arrive, or if it's product photography. I've done product photography for medical supplies, local breweries up in Indiana. I've had people ship product in for me to photograph. I've gone out to them to photograph. Lifestyle photography at a local welding fabricator, getting photography of the in-action work and what they're doing and the moment of the welding or the grinding with the sanders. I've been to medical offices and got pictures of equipment or procedures and different things like that. So the photography that I do has a really wide range. And I do have a small studio here in Little Rock where people can come out to the studio. It's a collaborative space, but it works for the studio environment photography. But most of my photography work is out on site. I would rather come to your environment. Even if it's a headshot, I'd rather come out to your environment because you are more relaxed. You're aware of your space. And people may not realize it, but that comes through in the photography. It comes through in your body language and your facial expression and different components like that. So just doing a wide range. When I, opened up our conversation, I talked about media production. And I think that's the important part to take away about the different tools. Like a lot of people are like, well, I need to call a photographer, but then they find someone like me and they're like, oh, you do video, but are you a photographer? So there's always that question of like, well, what do you do? What's your specialization? A little bit about me that we've talked before is it's hard to have favorites. And I have that same kind of issue when it comes to creativity. I don't have a favorite medium because they all do something very specific. And it doesn't mean that I'm not a professional in those areas. It just means that, well, photography is a different tool for the job. So when I talk about media production and visual design, you have to really go back to the storytelling and the creative vision and listening to the client and being able to hear what they want to do. Because I've had situations where I've heard someone say, I want a logo, make a logo. And we start talking through the process and I listen to what their obstacles are, what their challenges are, where their struggles and pain points are. And it comes up that it's like, well, I don't know if you really need a logo. Perhaps maybe let's set that aside for a second. Maybe you need a brochure, or maybe you need a mailing flyer, or maybe you need a social media campaign. So that's the other thing differently about how I work. And because I have so much background and experience working in different marketing departments and different advertising agencies over the years, I even teach at UCA, and there I teach branding and brand strategy and what brand strategy means. And a lot of people think a brand is a logo, but a logo isn't a brand. It has nothing really, I say it has nothing really to do with the brand, but if you take a pyramid and the logo's on the top of the pyramid, but in branding, you flip the pyramid upside down and you have to start at a different place. So, that whole background and understanding of communication, the background in psychology, the background in advertising and marketing is critical to the storytelling. And that's that merger between the two that I like to say is that's how we think differently. It is with a twist, because we're not going to give you something that we feel is not going to help you meet your goals.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So have you always done this type of work? I mean, I know you're a professor at a nearby college, but have you always been in this type of work, or did you do something different before starting this business?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes and no is the answer. So let me kind of connect the dots there. Yes, I've always been an artist, a creative. Okay. My father won't admit it, but he used to draw 1950s style cartoons. Oh, okay. And I've come across some of his work, and his work was amazing. My grandfather was a photographer, but just more of a amateur, not really hobbyist, but amateur photographer, because his work was amazing. He worked in steel plants and a lot of industrial stuff like railroad, the boat freight industry and different things like that. And so he took a lot of photographs of that 1930s, 1940s kind of environment. Amazing photographs. When he passed, all of his photo stuff came to me and different things like that. So I have always been involved in the creative tools, even videography. However, anyone that's in my generation knows that video production and media production, event production, TV production from our era was extremely expensive to get into. So in my early years, I didn't have as much access to the tools, but I still did the same processes. And I've always been involved in that. There was a short period of time I was also in construction, so I could build you a home from your digging the foundation into the ground and putting the ridge cap on the roof. But even there, I got more involved in the fine carpentry of kitchens and cabinetry. So that artistic component in me was there even in that short few years that I did the construction, and ended up working with the finished cabinetry carpentry team. And that's where we focused on the fine details. But then after that, I worked in advertising, marketing, public relations, all as a creative. I've done art direction for a marketing team, creative director for a marketing team. And I've always done my own business on the side. I always had my own freelance. I did get to a point in my life where I wanted something fresh and new, and that's when I got into teaching. So I teach this at universities as well as took that moment to kind of switch into that full-time, away from freelance into a full-time LLC, and just reaching out and helping others with that visual component of who they are in their storytelling.
Oh,
it's a long story.
I love it though. So would you contribute the art aspect to your success, or what would you contribute to your overall success today?
Perseverance. I will say that. I think my art had a component in it, of course. And even through the years, as you believe that you understand your art, you continue to further understand it no matter what. Like there's no like, I'm a master at this.
Yeah.
But there comes a time that you're like, oh, okay, I there's things I don't know and things I know really well, and how can I continue to learn and continue to solve those? And it is that drive in me to be creative, and I want to always be creating more than what's on the surface of something. It's like, wow, that's really beautiful, but if we do this to this, this is going to be even something greater than what it was.
Yeah. I think of the art aspect being a part of that storytelling, I guess, because as you're creating art, there's a story behind whatever it is that you're creating. I think of my granddaughter. My granddaughter loves to draw. And I often wonder, what is she thinking? What story is behind whatever it is that she's drawing? And I'll ask her, what are you thinking when you're drawing that? And she'll be like, nothing, I'm just drawing. And I'm like, is that really true? Or is there something that she's dreaming of, or is there something? And I've always really wondered that, but I don't ever get any answers from her. So I don't know, I'm curious about that part, because I always think, because she says I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. And I'm like, so what does that mean?
So the quick answer is like, yes, there's a thought process going on as she's just drawing. And that's an important aspect to that creation.
Yeah.
When I'm working, I'm looking at everything that is going on beyond the obvious. So if it's a corporate video where someone's just kind of talking and telling about their corporation or whatever it might be, an interview or something like that. And this is the hard part, I think, for a lot of clients, because it's that attention to detail. I could set a camera up and I could film you. I could get the audio. And even if it's a photograph, it's the same concept either way. Or even if I'm creating a design for a flyer or whatever it might be. Every aspect of what's in that composition is critical to the story. So it might be lighting. I'll get very particular on the way the light is hitting the back wall. What's the color of that light? Do I have a little bit of a shadow or something kind of going on there that is integrating well into the composition? What angle is that person at? Am I at their eye level? Am I above? Am I below? Where do I need to be for the particular message? What colors are in here? And even what objects are in the background. So I'm sitting today in my small little home office where I've got a bunch of gear stacked around me. And if I was, working with a client, I would be looking at every little nook and cranny to kind of see its position. Is it interfering with the main message? Is it distracting to the eye? What's that story? What's that visual communication? Am I getting to the essence of it? So, I call it layering. So you want to be able to think about the layers. If you have too many layers, that's just more information that somebody has to process. And people don't realize that they do it, but everything that they view, whether it's nanoseconds, subconsciously or whatever, has to be processed to understand the situation that they're in, to take away what they need to take away from that situation. So if there was a weird blinking light happening over here somewhere, people would be noticing that blinking light and perhaps not listening to the entirety of the story because it's a little distraction, or they're listening, but there's something going on that's pulling them away. even with a photograph, if there's a odd contrast with something that's creating a different focal point than the main focal point, well, then they're not looking where we wanted them to look. So to answer that question, yes, there is a lot going on there in the process of, being an artist and being a creative and what goes into that image making, no matter what it is.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack right there.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So Peter, we just talked about the art of, and the skill of what that looks like. And I also brought up earlier about the resolution and the quality of your videos and how wonderful that looks. I know you've worked with some very large clients across the U.S. You've also worked with some very small clients across, our community and across the United States. Let's talk about while the resolution, the quality looks great. That's what you do. You produce good quality work. I also know that you have different types of equipment, good quality equipment, lesser quality equipment, and the jobs take different types of equipment. So let's talk about the skill set, and dependent upon the job that you're doing as to what type of equipment it takes and the skill set that it takes to do certain types of jobs. And I know at some point in times, I've heard, as I've looked at different advertisements and stuff, they talk about the quality of a picture of an iPhone could even match the quality of photography. So can you address any of those types of skill sets?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to do that as well. I think to start out, like you talk about how you on social media, you'll, be curious about marketing and advertising. Like, hey, I want to do this on my own. How can I save some money? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I can do this on my iPhone, apparently. That's what everybody says. Yes, is the answer to that. So when it comes down to the equipment, the skill sets and different things in that manner, I've got I'm pausing because I want to be sure that I'm not talking about this in a way that, is sounding braggy, but it's not intended that way. So that's my precursor to that. I have somewhere in the vicinity of $60,000 to $70,000 in equipment, and that's a lower investment to other larger video production houses who could have anywhere in the range from $100,000 to $500,000 in equipment. So the equipment is just a tool. Okay. So whether you have your $1,000 iPhone or whether you have a cinema camera like I have that cost $6,000 to $10,000 just for the body itself, you can create effective content with both of those tools. The caveat to that is understanding your tools and understanding the execution, the limitation, the needs that you have and where they can be used. For example, the work that I did for NASA, I actually have one shot, it might be two, in their final video that I took with my iPhone. Because they made a suggestion to me as I was heading off the base that I should stop over at such and such a place on my way through if I'm going that way. And I wasn't, but I went that way anyhow, just to kind of check it out for the sake of it's a cool place. So when I was there, I was actually like, oh my gosh, all my gear's packed away in the trunk, but I want to get this one shot of this one thing because part of what we did, they're talking about a certain thing where this would look amazing while they're talking in the background. I took it with my iPhone, but I also understood the position of the sun, where I was standing, what I needed in that composition, and so on and so forth. For example, I have a picture that's going to be hanging in my office of some weather that came through, not our most recent violent weather, but another system that came through where the cloud formation caught me and was very striking. So all I had on my self was an iPhone. So I took that photo. That photo alone worked well in my little digital environment, but to use that into a larger print piece, I had to understand how to process that photo through some software, what the tool was that was printing out that photograph. So it went from a little digital photo on my phone to a 18 by 24 photo for my wall.
Wow.
But again, it comes back to the skills and the knowledge and understanding how to use all those things. And even with my small clients, there's a conversation about that final piece, that deliverable, that outcome, and what does it take to get to that outcome. And a lot of businesses don't have a NASA budget, right? So they're like, this is our budget. And the interesting thing, Tonya, is if you have a $300 budget or a $30,000 budget, I can help you have the most amazing creative piece from that. The difference is knowing what can be done within that budget, and then understanding the process, the skill set, the tools themselves. What's the best thing to get through that? So when a lot of people call me, that's obviously one of the first questions that comes up is, how much will this cost me? And then I tell them, I says, well, I have some numbers on a spreadsheet that say this is this price, that is this price, this is this price, and I can give you a number. But that's the other part of how I think differently with my business is I don't want to give them that sheet, not because I'm trying to keep it a secret, but I want to give them the best product I can give them. So my question to them is, what's your budget? That scares people because as soon as someone says, what's your budget, right? If you give them a range, guess what? They're going to be at the ceiling or just above the ceiling. If you say my budget's $5,000, you expect me to turn around and say, well, this is going to cost you $5,100, right? Because you're
going to go all the way to their budget.
Yeah. But that's not what the question means. So let me clarify that. So if you call me and I say, what is your budget? I'm asking you that because I want to be able to match what your investment is. And I do call it an investment because it's not a budget. It's not a cost. It's not an invoice. It's an investment. What do you have to invest in it? Like home remodeling, right? If you want to remodel your kitchen, you sit down and you figure out, well, we can invest this much money into our kitchen. We can't get the cabinets we wanted, but we're going to get these cabinets and it's going to look great. Yeah. So when I ask that budget, it tells me, am I bringing one camera? Am I bringing two cameras? Am I bringing this lighting kit? Am I bringing this lighting equipment? What are my audio needs? Okay. So each one of those different things according to the budget, in listening and understanding the deliverable, the story that you want to tell, who you're telling it to, what you want them to do, it's all critical to that conversation. And somebody may say, this is what I want, but my budget's $300. Then my conversation might be like, well, I can't give you that for $300, but I can give you like this for $300, So there's that discussion. And then when you have those discussions, a lot of people are like, oh, well, maybe we need to put a little bit more into this investment so that we get where we want to get to. And they will do that. And then there's other times that people come back and they say, we have this much to invest. And I'm like, I don't need that much. We can do this for $2,000 less. Yeah. So you can put that $2,000 into another aspect of your campaign for this, not with me, with somebody else or with something else. Maybe we can take that $2,000 and do some photography or some different components. So it's knowing that information that allows me to deliver the best product, the best final results. In kind of little transparency without talking about like what different projects cost. That Pepsi project that you talk about where we worked with them with Gatorade, that was a very, very low budget. but we gave them the product beyond what they were dreaming for, within that budget. So, don't be afraid of budget. Don't be afraid of the budget question. It's the way that we're able to deliver like that best product.
Well, and I was just going to add, don't be afraid to reach out, because with you, I know they're going to get good quality work for the amount that they've spent. They're going to get great work. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I know that to be, just from what I know about you, I know that that they're going to get great work. So as we draw close to the end of this interview, Peter, what is one piece of, or a good nugget of advice that you would offer the audience today, whether that's a tip, a trick, a quote, whatever that may be? What would you like to leave them today before we get your contact details if someone wants to reach out to you? Oh,
sure. I'd love to do that. I'm going to say this might be more than a nugget. It might be a 6-piece.
Okay.
or even a whole basket. Don't do this alone, right? So and when I say this, I don't mean a video production company or a photography company or a media agency or a marketing agency or a consultant or whatever it might be. It's important it's important to do this as a community. Starting a small business, a solopreneur, if you will, it does take a lot of effort, and leaning into others and their expertise is critical to your success. I know when I first started, and I still wonder about, do I have the budget to do certain things? But when you first start out, you don't have that budget to do everything that you're mentored to do. So you're like, well, I'll do that on my own. I'll tackle that too. I guess I'll be the marketing agency, the advertising agency, the promotions company, the lead generation, the people doing the work. And it's very difficult to do that to yourself. It's a stressor. So community and network, the community here that Tonya and I met, Alignable, is absolutely fantastic. It's continuing to grow and excel. And I encourage everyone to find your community, to find your network, and to find the people that you can lean into for those different needs and assist each other in that growth process for business.
Yes, absolutely. Very good tip. So where can the audience locate you if they want to reach out? Obviously, Alignable is one. That's best tip. Sure. Or not the best, but you go ahead and let them know where they can reach out to you.
I don't know. It might be the best.
It might be. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I'm really appreciating Alignable, and I see the opportunities that Alignable is going to offer us. So I'm going to continue to promote Alignable. However, beyond that, I'm going to say everywhere, because we have a presence on LinkedIn. You can follow me or my business page. I would love for you to connect with both. Obviously, Instagram and Facebook. You can, track us down there. All you have to do is literally Google, and we're all over Google as well. So if you just Google Twist Creative Studio, you'll find all of our connections there as well. Our website is twistcreativestudio.com. Sometimes that's a mouthful for a lot of people. They're like, "What? Slow down. You're what again?" twistcreativestudio.com. You can email me, Pete, at Twist Creative Studio, if you like. So we have plenty of ways to get in contact with me if you have any questions. And that's the other thing. I would love to have a conversation with you to see if we're a good match. And I do believe that every single one of my clients, it's a partnership. It's definitely not, like a service call or anything like that. I believe in wholeheartedly in every little business. That's another thing we didn't really talk about, but being a creative and telling other people's story, you really have to become one as best you can, as much as you can, with what they do and who they are and how they do it. So I am always invested in what other people are doing and passionately care about that.
I love that. That is so good. You know, we will also put those contacts on the show notes so that people can click the links to get to you as well, Peter. So I appreciate you mentioning all of those. And I do encourage all of you to at least take an opportunity to reach out to him if you're looking for advertising, video, photography needs in the B2B space, and give him an opportunity to give you a quote, allow him to listen to your needs and see how he and the business can help you. And then obviously we do want you to join Alignable if you're not already there, and connect with both Peter and myself and let us see how we can assist you and create community there. So, Peter, any lasting words before I do our closure today?
Well, I don't think so. I guess my closing words would be, I hope to hear from as many of you that have even the smallest, simplest question. Don't be afraid to reach out. And this end of the creative world, if you're not a creative person, isn't as scary as it seems. Right now, visual communication is the number one marketing tool, as far as my research shows.
I
whether
agree.
It's video, photography, or other design needs. Presenting yourself in a professional way is critical.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, if you find value in today's podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would share the podcast with a friend. I do leverage the platform not only to share valuable insights and advice with a large audience, but also to provide my guests and my clients an opportunity to showcase their expertise and to reach new audiences. This podcast serves as a hub for entrepreneurs and small business owners to connect, collaborate, and learn from one another, which will expand their networks and resources. I appreciate you listening and helping the world by sharing our words. Thank you for being an active listener and subscriber, and I'll be back soon, as you know, for another episode. Goodbye, and I love you all.